Welcome to the 9th District Congressional Debate. This is brought to you by the Rabun Republicans and the Young Republicans of Northeast Georgia. We hope you enjoy this debate. Thank you.
We're missing Andrew Clyde and John Wilkinson, and Kevin Tanner notified us that he would not be participating in the debate today. So have I got everybody here? Okay. All right, we'll start the introduction. I'll introduce the candidates with their introductory statements. Michael Bogus lives in Bank County. He is a political activist and has served as state lead for a Georgia constitutional Paul congressman that served parts of the 9th district. He has homes in Clark and Towns counties, and he is a practicing physician. Matt Gutler was born and raised in North Georgia. He is a home builder by trade, and he has served in the Georgia State Legislature for 4 years. Is a 25-year retired law enforcement officer from Blue Ridge, Georgia. Ethan Underwood is from Forsyth County, where he resides with his wife and 4 children. A proven conservative and respected leader, Ethan has served as chairman of the Forsyth County Republican Party and a vice chair of the 9th Congressional District Republican Party and as a member of the state GOP committee. Kelly Weeks is the owner of Georgia Gun Store in Gainesville, Georgia. Kelly is a Georgia native who lives in Lula with her husband. So I hope I have all the candidates introduced there. Now we will proceed to the opening statements of the candidates. The candidates are reminded of the time rules. Each candidate opening and closing statements. Each candidate will be allowed to answer each question statement with Mr. Bogus.
Excuse me, but I think you missed me. Get quiet.
Okay, Mr. Clyde. Oh, let me go back here. Andrew Clyde is a Jackson County resident and a U.S. Navy veteran who owns Clyde Armory, a firearms business. Andrew has a history of standing up to big government, like when he defeated the corrupt IRS with the help of President Trump and Congressman Doug Collins. So, okay, now we will start with the opening statements. We will start with Mr. Bogus.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Bogus. Like you said, I am a state leader for the militia of Georgia. Here, I wrote a few pointers down. But basically, I'm here not for a party. I'm here for the people. I don't have any party influences in mind. We have to protect our constitutional rights as citizens ourselves. Because the government's not going to do it for us. Our elected officials don't listen to us. I know how hard it is being a blue-collar worker trying to make it in life with the overtaxation, and it's just terrible. It's terrible. But I'm sorry, my internet's coming in and out. Hold on. I'm not going to use my campaign like most of these political people. It is for. I'm sorry, I'm cutting out.
Where did your mouse go?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I was just making sure. Like I said, with this campaign right here, we got to address certain issues. I've worked all my life for everything that I got. Ups and downs, and the reason why I'm running myself is because I've faced these adversities from government overreach. My wife, my first wife, had a opioid addiction, and she went to the government for help to overcome that addiction. They traded one drug for another, which was methadone, and she was killed in a car accident, leaving me with my 3-week-old daughter at the time to raise by myself.
Mr. Vargas, your time is up.
Okay.
Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown on? Mr. Clyde.
That's on the news page. Not yet.
Mr. Clyde, Mr. Clyde, we're having problems hearing you. Can you get up closer to your mic?
Okay, all right, is that better?
That's better.
Thank you. My name is Clyde, and I'm running to be your next congressman. My wife Jennifer and I, we live in Jackson County. We're members of Prince Avenue Baptist Church, where I serve as a deacon and sing in the choir. Jennifer plays violin in the orchestra. I'm graduating from college. I was commissioned to U.S. Sir, 28
Whatever you're doing, it's messing it up.
Sorry. After completing my active military service, I settled down in Athens and from the master's degree in business at the University of Georgia. In 1991, I started a firearms business called Clyde Armory. What began as a small business in my garage has grown into a nationwide company with 2 brick-and-mortar locations here in Georgia. As a veteran turned small business owner, I was living the American dream. Then everything changed. On April the 12th, 2013, the IRS, without warning, wrongfully confiscated $940,000 from my firearms business. They had been doing this to small business owners across the country through an unconstitutional process known as civil asset forfeiture. Unfortunately, most people didn't have the financial resources to stand up for themselves and ultimately lost their businesses. But I challenged the IRS, the corrupt IRS, both in court and through the legislature. And I eventually won, but I couldn't stop there. I decided to make it my mission to ensure this never happened to a fellow American ever again. So I went to Washington to work with Congress to pass legislation eliminating the ability of the IRS to seize legally earned money, saving hundreds of individuals and business owners from wrongful prosecution each year. And on July 1st last year, President Trump signed our bill.
Mr. Clyde, your time. Mr. Clyde, your time is up.
To run for public office, but this experience showed me there's a very thin line between we and us. We are in the of our lifetime, and I personally experienced the brutality of it, so I won't back down.
Mr. Clyde, your time's up. I will go to Mr. Gutler.
Thanks. Hey everybody, I'm Matt Gertler. I'm a state representative in Georgia for 4 years in House District 8. I'm 31 years old. I'm married to Marissa Gertler, my wife, and I have a new baby, so I'll be turning 1 year old this July. I built a home in Georgia my whole life and built homes with my father. That's where I learned the value of hard work and integrity. Our contractor used it one page, it's all about keeping your word, the golden rule. Lead by example, that's what I've done as a state rep, and that's what I'll continue to do as a congressman. And lead by example, I've been named the most conservative legislator in Georgia for 4 years straight, but I'm also the most attacked legislator, much like our president. But why am I attacked? Because I consistently stand for our shared values and principles, and I hold my oath to the Constitution I swore to defend, regardless of the political cost. That's what sets our campaign apart. I vote no more than the legislator as well, because I stand on principle. When I first ran for office, I was 26 years old, and I've handily beat the establishment in 3 elections so far. We don't need any more out-of-touch politicians, rhinos, or these bandwagon Republicans we see all the time. I'm 100% pro-gun. That's why I introduced constitutional carry my freshman year in 2017. I'm 100% pro-life. That's why I championed the heartbeat bill. And was one of the only few Republicans to speak in favor of the bill, which only passed by a mere 1 vote. I stand with our president, President Trump, and his agenda, put American values and principles first, supporting our military and our veterans and bringing them home, our troops home. I've been endorsed by one of the most conservative congressmen, our senators in the United States, Senator Rand Paul. Our district is one of the most conservative districts in the country. I'm the most conservative legislator in Georgia. Our campaign is right in line with our mountain values and principles. Vote on June 9th to elect me to Congress to combat the crazy AOCs of the world and the crazy socialists, and stand up for what's right, for the founders intended to limit the government conservative principles. Let's put America first. Let's bring our troops home. Let's bring peace and prosperity for my daughter and future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gertler. Ms. Strickland.
Good day. I want to thank everybody for being with us today. I believe that we need to stop sending career politicians to Washington and expecting a change. I'm not a politician, nor am I an establishment candidate. I'm a wife and mother, and I served 26 years in law enforcement. My experience in law enforcement has taught me a lot about crime and corruption, and I believe there's a lot of corruption in Washington. I want to go to Washington and stop the waste, the fraud, and the abuse. My parents taught me that hard work and treating people with respect is how you want to treat people. And I want to represent the people of 9th District with those principles. I want to go to Washington and stop the left from trying to destroy this country with socialism and hatred. I want to help President Trump drain the swamp and stop the waste, fraud, and abuse. I am blessed to live in the North Georgia mountains, and I want to represent the people of the 9th District with honesty, truthfulness, and hard work. I want to be Georgia's strong conservative voice in Congress. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Hi, my name is Ethan Underwood. I'm an attorney, I'm a businessman, and for the better part of my adult life, I have served in leadership of the Republican Party working to elect conservative candidates to office. But while we've been doing that, the left has been grooming a large number of our populace to believe that America was built on faulty principles, and to believe that the system stacked against them, and they're now openly embracing socialism. Folks, these people are not just voting, they're walking the halls of Congress. That frightens me. It frightens me what our children are being exposed to, and it scares me what our future of our country holds if we don't stand up to the scourge of socialism now. So I am running to uphold the truths of America and to articulate the opportunities that America holds for all of our citizens. Now, I'm a property rights attorney. I represent individuals and businesses when they go up against the government. So whether we're handling land use issues to protect people's right to operate a business and farm and to run a church, or whether we're litigating property tax appeals, or whether I'm fighting a condemnation, my job is to make sure that the government doesn't run roughshod over the people that it's supposed to be serving. But we've seen what elected officials will do. We've seen what they'll do to protect their power. We've seen what the Democrats in Washington will do to try to hijack a relief bill in order to throw in a liberal wish list that would never get passed on its own. We need someone who's going to go into a hostile situation and fight. We need someone who's going to be battle ready on days that Trump and this battle. I'm good at down until we get solutions. I'm asking for it to be here in Washington. I look forward to today's discussion.
Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Weeks. Ms. Weeks.
Next representative in Congress. To some, I might seem like an unusual choice, but I assure you my life experiences have made me the right choice for today's political climate. My husband Mike and I have been married for 25 years. We have 2 children who, like us, have Tourette's syndrome. Tourette's is a neurological disorder that causes tics, so if you see me making some funny faces, it's When our kids were young, I became an advocate for them to ensure that they got the resources that they needed to succeed. And during this process, I met a lot of great people, and I served on the board of the Tourette's Association of Georgia. And in 2008, we started a camp for kids with Tourette's that today still serves 150 kids per summer. Our kids are both in college now and doing great. Now, back in 1996, when we were first married, Mike opened he got out of the military. He was an Army Ranger. He got out of the military and he started a business. And that business grew to 25 employees with 50 square feet of commercial space. But when the housing crisis of 2008 came, it carried over into the commercial loan business, and we lost everything. Because of this, I've seen firsthand the bad policies we do in our life. 2 years later, in 2010, we scraped together all we could, and we started Georgia Gun Store with very little inventory. We have built it slowly and debt-free. It was a lot of work, but we came out on the other side very successful. Now, 10 years later, we face a new challenge. Along with all of America, businesses are going to be going out soon, and we need somebody in Congress. I am a woman working in a male-dominated industry, just like me, and I promise you, I will do what's best for
Ms. Weeks, your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we'll start with the question. I will go alphabetically down the list, and I'll reverse the order at times during the questions. The first question is, what are your overall goals if elected to represent Georgia's 9th Congressional District? We'll start with Mr. Bogus.
My overall goals for the 9th District is to have better taxation for middle class and poverty level, because that's what we have here in this district. It's not Hollywood, not Slap Bridge, so we're overrun with taxes. I mean, I'm paying tons of taxes every week when I get paid. So the protection of our Second Amendment and the protection of the rest of our constitutional rights. I've been rallying against Atlanta for 5 years. For 5 years, I've been trying to protect our rights. So overall goal is protection of the people. We're taxed to death. It's time to stop.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bogus. Okay, we'll go, Dr. Brown's not with us yet. We'll go to Mr. Clyde. Mr. Clyde on?
I'm on, but I can't get my video. You turned it off.
Okay, we'll just go with your audio.
Okay, all right. My goal is to defend the Second Amendment of the Constitution. I've spent my entire adult life in business defending the Second Amendment. I think I fully understand it better than anyone else, and so that's one of my primary goals. The second is to defend life. I'm 100% pro-life from conception to natural death, so I would defend life. I'm an ardent supporter of our local crisis pregnancy center, and I don't think you'll find anyone more pro-life than myself. I put my wallet where my beliefs are. And I also would support the president's agenda. I think he's going the right way with the country.
Okay, that's, Mr. Clyde, that's your minutes up. Okay, we'll go down to Mr. Gertler.
Thank you so much. I ran for state rep to bring principles back into politics. That's exactly what I'll do if I'm elected to Congress. I've proven myself for the last 4 years to be the most conservative member of the General Assembly. So there's no other candidate that's more conservative than me. That's a proven record. Some of my goals is to never compromise our values and principles. Never compromise on the Constitution. I've never done that. I have never voted for a tax increase, and I never will. Government is way too big as it is now, and we need leaders up there that won't compromise. I've seen so many people to get into the state house. 99% of them fold and use the first vote, and that's the budget votes. I've consistently been a fiscal hawk for the people of Georgia and called out bloated budgets and subsidies more than anybody else has in 4 years. I'm consistently voting against those budgets. I'll do the same thing in Congress to call out the corruption, call out the big government over-regulations, and also stand with Trump and his agenda to put values and principles first, Americans first. Those are some of my goals, of course. You know, when you follow the Constitution, that means upholding your Second Amendment rights, your First Amendment rights, your Fourth Amendment rights.
Mr. Cutler,
Right back there.
thank you. Your time's up.
Appreciate it.
All right, now we'll go to Ms. Strickland. Ms. Strickland?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. One of my goals is to protect Social Security Reserve and their funds from Congress who continue to try and use it as a slush fund. I would also like to bring in term limits. I don't believe that politicians need to be going to Washington and making it a lifelong career. I also want to protect veterans. I believe veterans should go to the VA. All veterans should be able to go to the VA at no cost, and I want to protect their pensions and disability monies. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to Mr. Underwood.
Sure. The COVID-19 crisis has changed our priorities. We're going to have to reevaluate. We've got to get businesses back on their feet. I'm going to focus on that and working with the financial industries to help with conservative private industry solutions to get businesses back on their feet. We've got to replenish our emergency stockpiles. We've got to be working to bring back manufacturers back to the United States so that we're not dependent on China to help us in a deal with the disease that they've caused. And once all that's done, once we get back on our feet, we've got to focus on the federal budget and make sure that we're not spending beyond our means.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. We'll go down to Ms. Weeks.
Yeah, of course, I'm going to focus on gun rights. I think everybody here is pro-gun. I have a little bit of different experience with it, having a gun store and actually doing all the background checks. So I understand the laws intimately, and I would fight to stop any new gun laws. I am for term limits because I believe that we've got people that have gone there for way too long, and people that have caused most of the problems we have are still there thinking they're going to solve them. And I think it's time we put somebody different in office instead of the same old type of person. Also, I'd like to work on the mental health issue. I think we've got veterans that are they're homeless, and we've got veterans that we have a bad suicide problem now, and we need to have the help there for them.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to the third question. Which legislation would you support to curb illegal immigration? And we'll start at the end with Ms. Weeks again.
To curb illegal immigration?
Yeah, what legislation would you support?
We need to get the wall built. We need to stop funding anybody who comes here illegally. I think that maybe changing some things to make it easier for people to get here legally would help, but we've definitely got to stop these more funding that get them to get here and the incentives that they get from working in places that hire them, but definitely build the wall first.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Yes, this COVID-19 crisis has shown us that immigration is part of national security. It's an issue of public health, national security. We need to know who is in our country. We want folks to come in here, and we need work. We know that from the poultry growers in Northeast Georgia, we need folks coming into the country legally. We need to have more of the H-1A visas, but we need folks to be here legally. We got to know who they are. We got to know if they're healthy. We got to know if they have criminal backgrounds to know that they're safe. But we can reform the immigration system. It can be done. Democrats are fighting it simply because they want to register folks to vote and put them on welfare rolls. I'll fight that, but I will work to bring immigration reform to help our businesses.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland. Ms. Strickland?
Yes, thank you. I agree. We need to lead the wall. I think we need to hire more border patrol officers so that we can properly maintain the border. We need to do better vetting on the people that are coming into our country to stop the influx of these terrorist factions that keep coming in. And with the wall, I believe that we would reduce or even eliminate a lot of the illegal immigrants coming in, the illegal drugs and the human trafficking. A lot of those things are financially draining to our country. And those are the things that I think we should continue to move forward on.
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. Gertler.
Well, thank you so much. Well, we should be able to believe the Constitution every time. You know, we should have strong borders, means you're going to have a strong country, and following the rule of law. And we have more immigrants come to our country, more than any other country combined. And we have a great, prosperous country. We want immigrants, but we want to come here the proper way, in the rule of law. You know, the federal government specifically in the Constitution says, it talks about naturalization. So when the states have these sanctuary cities, it's actually unconstitutional. We should crack down upon that. And loose voting laws as well, and also crack down on the welfare state. That's really a big problem that I've seen on the state level. So much welfare being doled out through taxpayers' money, it's really immoral. And as your next congressman, always follow the Constitution and follow the rule of law. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde?
Well, first of all, I think we definitely need to build the border wall. That is part of national security, and it is it's a vital part of our immigration. I think we need to end the path to the expedited path to citizenship. I think that's wrong for people expedited path to citizenship when they come here illegally. The laws of the country that they came from. And then finally, I think we need to vet the people who are actually coming here to make sure they have a strong work ethic and not just come here to be on our welfare rolls. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, first and foremost, our judicial system is crap. Because when they come over, we give them a piece of paper and they're supposed to come to court. And they don't. They disappear. So what I suggest is when you give them that piece of paper, they don't come to court and you start charging them $500 a day. When they are eventually caught, they either have to pay the fine or serve the time in jail. They're deported right afterwards. The wall is a great idea, but anybody that's been to the border, like myself, and seen the tunnels under the wall's a great idea. Let's get rid of the corrupt border patrol first and hire vets for border patrol.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we'll go to the fourth question. What legislation would you support to strengthen religious freedom? And we'll start with Mr. Bogus.
We already have the First Amendment. It's been ratified. The Bill of Rights has been ratified a long time ago. So the legislation for freedom of religion, take government out of the equation. They don't need to be in there anyway. We escaped England to get rid of persecution for religion. So, yeah, we got way too much government in our lives as it is. So, stay with the First Amendment.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Clyde? Mr. Clyde, we can't hear you.
I think the first and most important thing is to maintain religious liberty. Any laws that we have that take away from religious liberty, I think need to be looked at. We need to go back to a constructionalist view of the First Amendment, where it says Congress shall make no law prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And I think that we need to hold to that, and hold to that very, very strongly.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gertler.
Thanks so much. Well, I'm the constitutionalist. The First Amendment is hold dear to me, and as a Christian, the Pilgrims came here to escape religious persecution that founded this country. It's enshrined in our Constitution, and is what the founding fathers intended. That's what we should be always upholding, no matter what. Even when you look at the churches nowadays, the 501c3s, really stifling what the churches can say. That goes down to the IRS as well. We should eliminate that. And we think that, having the freedom here we have in the country to worship as you want, to speak as freely as you want, to defend yourself. As a constitutionalist, these are the things you should be doing as an elected official, protecting life, liberty, and property. So those are the things that are most important to me, and that's something I will always uphold. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland?
Yes, I support our religious freedoms, and I believe, and I also support when President Trump brought prayer back into the schools. I believe we should uphold those freedoms to the best of our abilities, so that the future can uphold and really have the freedom of religion as we move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood?
Yes, I think we need, a lot like we tried to here in Georgia, or have passed the religious, strengthen religious freedom, to prohibit state laws that prohibit conscientious dissent, activities that violate people's state interest. They have proved that there's a reason their religion into conscientious dissent.
Thank you. Ms. Weeks?
Religion, whatever religion you are, I am Christian, and it seems like over the years we've had more and more people want to stop Christians from being able to publicly display crosses or publicly. I do think it's kind of scary that through this crisis right now with the virus, that the government has shut down every church in the country, and just it's over. A church was holding a service, and everybody they were in their cars while the pastor was inside, and they were listening on the radios, and the police showed. That is just way over the line, and I hope that all of them go to court and fight this, and that they win, because that is definitely overstepping the line.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the fifth question. What committee assignments would you seek and I? Ms. Weeks?
Thought of that one. You're gonna have to skip me on that one, because that's not one I've thought about.
Okay, thank you. Mr. What committee assignments would you seek in Congress, and why?
I will seek to be on the Judiciary Committee. Representative Collins has shown how important that committee is. As an attorney, I understand processes, I understand procedures. I also understand when the Democrats are abusing those processes and procedures, and we need to continue that. It's a powerful assignment. We don't need from the 9th. I'd also like to be on the National Security Committee, work for our veterans, work for our military. My son just got out of the Army back in December. I have a very tender spot for those who are serving and for their families, and I would love to serve in Washington on that committee as well.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland? Ms. Strickland? Ms. Strickland, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Thank you. One of the committees I would really like to be on is the Veteran Affairs. My brother being a retired vet, a combat vet, I've learned a lot from him, and I've talked to a lot of other veterans, and there needs to be some true management to the VA and to the mental illness that is happening to a lot of the veterans, and the fact that they need to have better health care and long-term health care, and their monies need to be untaxed. So that's one of the things I would really like to be on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gartler?
Well, thank you so much. Well, the Foreign Relations Committee, I'd like to be on that. Article 1, Section 8 refers to the powers of war. I think that, like Trump agrees with about bringing our troops home, if we're going to go to war, we're going to have to openly debate it. Article 1, Section 8, foreign relations is very important to me. Oversight and reform regarding our Second Amendment rights. Those are the committees I would like to be on, so we can, get rid of the ATF and, get back to the states and repeal the NFA, National Firearms Act. Those are some of the things that are important to me, and those are some of the committees that I'm interested in if I was elected to Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde?
Okay, I think of the two committees that I would like to be on. The first is Armed Services. As a 28-year Navy veteran, as an aviation logistics officer, so I understand the business side of the Navy, and I understand the warfare side of the Navy, having 3 combat tours in Iraq and Kuwait. So I think I'm uniquely situated or suited to be a member of the Armed Services Committee. And then as a veteran, I think I'd like to also be on the Veteran Affairs Committee. We need a lot of help there. My father is a veteran of both World War II and the Korean War. So I have seen how the VA has worked in his life, and it definitely needs some adjustment and some better oversight. So I would like to be on the Veteran Affairs Committee as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus?
Yes, I think I would like to be on the executive committee, and the reason why is because of the taxation. That way we have somebody normal, everyday average Joe, and they're telling the citizens, our constituents, what's actually going on. And somebody to help with the taxation as far as reducing for our citizens in Georgia.
Thank you. Now we'll go to the 6th question. What would you do to cut federal deficit spending? And we'll start with Mr. Bogus.
To cut federal spending, we need transparency in government spending. Eliminate foreign aid. Let people hate us for free. We don't have to pay them for it.
That it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Clyde? Mr. Clyde, we can't hear you.
All right, here we go. Institutional, like the Department of Education. I think we could eliminate that and help balance the budget. We could also eliminate the EPA. I think that's a state responsibility, just like the Department of Education. I think those responsibilities need to go back to the states and be held at a local level. So I think eliminating those two departments, as they're not part of the Constitution, not part of the 18 enumerated powers that is given to the federal government, I think would be a great start.
Thank you. Mr. Gertler.
Thanks so much. Well, we could start with eliminating the Department of Education. It's a failure. Also, Social Security, we know that's a mess right now, but we should honor our commitment to those who have paid in. And, future generations should be able to opt out on that. That would save a lot of money. Of course, one of the biggest things is our foreign aid, reforming that. Hundreds of billions of dollars go to foreign countries. That even our enemies, you'd see this happening with previous administrations. So reforming that is much needed. And as a congressman, I will always do that. $23 trillion in debt. I mean, this is out of control. We're kicking the can down the road. As a fiscal hawk, this is something I've always been fighting against on Georgia as a state representative. We add about $1 billion every year to Georgians. It's not right, and we need to be accountable to the people. And you count on me if I'm your next congressman to always be a fiscal hawk. I'm the most conservative member of the state house, and I believe if I'm elected to Congress, I'll be the most conservative congressman in the United States. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
Hello, thank you. I think we need more fiscal responsibility. We need to stop Congress with their waste and their fraud and their use of our tax dollars. We need to reduce foreign aid a lot. I think we need to take care of America first before we start taking care of everybody else. And we need to reduce the welfare programs also. We need to manage it so that we have people that are on the welfare system can go back to work, which I think the president is doing a wonderful job with. And we also need, I agree also, we need to eliminate the Department of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
First and foremost, we need to reduce foreign aid to hostile nations and to cut out certain UN programs. Next, we need to reduce HUD expenditures. In fact, we could wrap HUD into the Department of Commerce. I don't even think that needs to be a standalone department. I would like to do the same with the Department of Education. That has been how liberals have gotten into the minds of this younger generation, is by feeding and taking over our education system. We need to wipe out the Department of Education and reduce those expenditures. We need to reduce our debt, paying down this debt, because the interest expense is eating us alive. And then we also need to seek out fraud and save funds.
Thank you. Ms. Weeks.
I'd say we cut foreign aid, we cut out pork. Any bills that are introduced can't have amendments that buy those. They can't add in more pork to those. Cut funding to the UN. Cut funding for education, and no more funding to and cut welfare, especially to labels that are coming here.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to question 7. How do you intend to protect gun rights? And we'll start with Ms. Weeks.
Well, gun rights, we don't need any more laws, that's for sure. I think every time that there is a shooting or something bad happens, we end up being blamed instead of the person who actually committed the crime. I am ready to fight against any liberals that try to put in more gun control, and I would like to eliminate get silencers off of the NFA and cut back any more legislation that puts more burden on gun owners.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Well, I'll tell y'all, when I'm running for office, my favorite thing to do is be in the woods and hunting. I love my guns, I love to shoot, but I also recognize the Second Amendment doesn't say a single word about hunting. It's about being able to protect your family and protect your property. So I side with the NRA. They take the position, and I take the position, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, so you don't give them a single inch. I look to the NRA for guidance whenever I'm voting on any type of gun bill, but you can trust me, I won't be voting for any new restrictions on your Second Amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
make sure that we don't have any more, eliminate any red flags. We don't need them. They shouldn't be in any kind of effect. I also believe in a universal carry so that if we get one, we do a background check in one state, it should be good for all the states. And I believe that that would help a lot with the gun laws. And thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know, I did all.
Mr. Gertler.
Thank you so much. The Second Amendment and that's no compromise statement to me. The Second Amendment rights are God-given rights. We're born with them. That's what our founders intended. I've been fighting for the Second Amendment since day one as elected to the state House back in 2017. And introduced constitutional carry. This will allow law-abiding citizens in Georgia to defend themselves and their families. If I'm elected to Congress, I'll uphold my oath to the Constitution. I want to repeal the NFA, and I want to, if you look at this really as well, you look at Republicans nowadays, we had even Mitch McConnell the other day that was entertaining the idea of considering assault weapons ban. This I see in the Georgia House, it's the same swamp we're facing, just on a smaller scale. We always have to uphold our Second Amendment rights and call out the rhino Republicans that are attempting to undermine our Second Amendment rights here in the United States. A lot of compromise happening in that. And so accountability member on our Second Amendment rights.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
Dereg fire industry. No more firearms laws. There will be no red flag laws. I think we need to pass the HPA, the Hearing Protection Act, to remove suppressors from the National Firearms Act. Suppressors shouldn't even be firearms at all. I mean, they don't shoot anything. We need to eliminate the sporting use definition within the law. If we eliminate the sporting use definition, then we take away a lot of the liberals' clowns. And we also need to remove excise tax on firearms. I bet most of you didn't know that our Second Amendment is being taxed right now through excise tax. 10% on ammunition, 11% on rifles, and we need to eliminate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood. Correction. Mr. Bogus. Can't hear you, Mr. Bogus.
Sorry, I was trying to unmute it. Any and every gun law is a violation of our constitutional right. First and foremost, we need to abolish the ATF. We need to abolish the NFA Act of 1934. We need to make it to where everyday citizens can purchase firearms from our military. Instead of our military getting to sell it, and our government sell the military weapons to foreign countries. It should be offered to the American citizens because we already paid for it. So all gun laws are unconstitutional. I will never vote for a gun law or any kind of restriction for guns.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to question 8. Would you seek to enact a federal bill similar to Georgia's heartbeat law? If so, which changes might you make? And would you make such legislation more or less restrictive?
Yes, I am pro-life, 100%, from conception till natural death. I believe it should be up to the state, and I think it looks pretty good as it is. And I honestly believe that if you're against abortion, you shouldn't have to pay taxes. Our money shouldn't go to something that we're against.
legislation in the legislature, you have to take steps in order to get to a final destination. But being 100% pro-life from conception to natural death, I think the heartbeat bill should be backed up and start. Those are the changes that I would make. I think Roe v. Wade needs to be overturned completely because if we don't protect life, then we have truly lost our way as a nation. Thank you.
Thanks so much. This is a very important issue, probably one of the most important issues of our country and my generation. And for many generations, 60 million plus people have been aborted. And abortions is totally more. We pushed through last year. It was a good bill. It didn't go far enough. Life begins at conception. Are we saying that before 6 weeks, the life's not valuable? That's something I championed on. I was only one of the few Republicans to stand up and speak in favor of that bill, which passed by a mere one vote. This is what I'm talking about when I talk about these rhino Republicans. Many members didn't show up, went to the bathrooms, didn't have the courage to put yes or no button. That's unacceptable and something I'll never do. But we've got to get the government out of funding of abortions, and this covers just $500 million with Planned Parenthood. It's unacceptable. It's something I'll always fight against. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
Yes, thank you. I support the heartbeat bill. I also think that no tax dollars organization that supports abortion. And I believe we need to support our mothers, our unborn babies, and their future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Yes, I would support a change of the law, changes the definition of a person. To read Roe versus Wade, what it states by a liberal judge that if the unborn child is deemed a person under law, then they will be afforded all the protections of law, which means the protection of their life. So by changing the definition of what is a person and injecting that into all federal law, interpreting federal law, that would put forward federal protection of all unborn children from the time of conception, and we need to protect to natural death. I'll tell you, my oldest daughter has Down syndrome. Something I'm particularly concerned about is that nearly 90% of children with Down syndrome are aborted, just because people feel that they're being protect all people. It's imperative. It's a very important to me, and by simply changing the definition of federal law, we can accomplish this.
Thank you. Ms. Weeks.
I am pro-life. I think we need to defund Planned Parenthood. Life begins at conception, and I'm 50 years old, and back when I was younger, we really didn't understand this. I mean, everybody called it a blob of cells, and we know far more now than we did 40 years ago. We definitely need to stop abortion, and starting with defunding Planned Parenthood would be a good idea.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to question 9. If elected, how would you combat so-called sanctuary cities which defy federal immigration laws? We'll start with you, Mr. Bogus.
By arresting the people in charge of the city, let them sit and chill. That's the way I see it. And then go ahead and deport all the illegal immigrants.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
Well, first off, I would eliminate the federal funding of sanctuary cities. I think that's a mistake. And then also, I would seek to hold politicians, if it's possible, accountable for their decisions in federal law. Now, when a sanctuary city policy, then that particular politician, based on their votes, could then be held accountable through criminal law or for violating federal law. So I think those two points right there would do a lot to eliminate sanctuary cities.
Thank you. Mr. Gertler.
Thanks so much. Well, the magnet really is the welfare state, and that's why this is happening. But the federal government has cut all funding to the states that uphold these unconstitutional laws, have illegals, and are defying federal law. Either for America first, like Trump says, for American citizens first and foremost. But the welfare state really is this magnet for everybody to come here and take advantage of the system while we're going into debt at the same time. Bypassing the Constitution and upholding the rule. And so it's very egregious what's happening. And so we need to cut all funding to states that do this unconstitutional act in sanctuary cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
I agree. I also think that we need to defund or eliminate the federal funding for sanctuary cities and make them those lawmakers responsible for when they commit crimes such as diverting ICE or putting things out that put ICE in jeopardy when they are trying to do their job. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
I think the answer to this one's simple. You bleed them out in the wallet. You get them in the wallet, you stop funding them and sending them welfare month dollars and any kind of federal dollars, they'll stop. That always changes behavior when you cut the cord. President Trump is doing that now, and we're seeing the effect it's having.
Thank you. Ms. Weeks.
Well, we definitely need to defund sanctuary cities, but I think one thing people haven't thought about is these sanctuary cities, they're always Democratic, and when they do that, when they allow people to come in illegally, they pad the numbers. This year is the census, and what happens when you have padded numbers? You get more representatives. It really hurts the rest of the country because we're losing out our representatives, and they're going to these places that have people that aren't even illegal, or that aren't legal, sorry. But it adds the numbers, and we need to stop that, and they definitely shouldn't be counted in the census. I know that President Trump fought for that, but they took the question off the census questionnaire, which is a shame.
Thank you. I will go to question 10. If elected, how will you support President Trump and his agenda? And we'll start with Ms. Weeks.
Well, President Trump, I have been a strong supporter of him. It has been very nice to see him accomplish things, even though he has been bombarded with case after case. They just keep coming after him. I would support him with the wall. I would support him with getting rid of sanctuary cities. I would support him in rebuilding the economy because we're about to have to do that. We had the best economy going, and then this virus hit and everything got shut down. I would help fight against all the liberals, especially these women that have come to Congress that seem to be running the show. They're all new, and say something, even though they're right. Every time they say something, these women just call them sexist, and so it puts them in a bad position to speak out against them. So I would be up in front and in their face, fighting for President Trump and his agenda.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
I think first and foremost, we've got to focus on rebuilding the economy. I think having a strong supporter to help the president with tax policy, with incentives, for working and making sure that we can pay for these new federal actions we're going to have to take to help out businesses. As a businessman, I've been there. We've got 25 25 employees here with my law firm. We understand the struggles that people are going through. I think having that insight would be particularly helpful. At the same time, we need somebody on the Judiciary Committee to keep people like Adam Schiff off of the president's back so he can do his work. We can't give up that seat by where we lose Doug Collins. We need to have a attorney representative, someone who understands the law, and someone who can get on the Judiciary Committee to keep the Democrats off his back while he's trying to work to rebuild the economy.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
Yes, Trump and his policies. I also support his policies towards small business and just religious freedom. I want to help him stop the fraud and abuse and the waste that we have in Washington, and also help with and fight actually with the radical left and their constant attacks towards them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gardler.
Thanks so much. Of course, Trump's been this deregulation. That's been awesome. His stance on pro-life, that's something we talked about before. You know, building the wall, border security, having a strong country, bringing the troops home. You know, this is something that, you know, I think that it's shown immense restraint with more than any other president about going to war and upholding the Constitution. And, you know, fight socialism, fight the fake news. And no one's talking about this. You know, the spying apparatus and the FISA courts that continually undermine and try to take Trump out. Those things can be looked at as elected officials in Congress and in the Senate. They should be looking at reforming those or getting rid of them entirely. They're really unconstitutional. And so those are some of the things I want to work with Trump on. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
First off, I would certainly help him. I've been a huge supporter of President Trump ever since July of 2015. You go to Clyde Armory and you'll see numerous Trump pen signs, big Trump pen signs out in front, and they've been there for years. I would keep the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, make sure that stays the law of the land. I would be a proud member of the Freedom Caucus. The Freedom Caucus is probably the biggest supporter of President Trump, and I would be a proud member of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus.
Yes, thank you. Being a Trump supporter, going to the rallies and such, I'm always going to in everything that he has done. His agenda is absolutely perfect. He's looking out for the people. He's trying to create jobs, bring back jobs from foreign lands, and cut the debt. So, yeah, just basically everything. The only two problems that I ever had, that's the only two problems I've ever had.
Thank you. Question 11. How would you lead during the current coronavirus pandemic or a similar unprecedented situation that might arise during your tenure as a congressperson? We'll start with Mr. Bogus.
Yes, sir. My wife is a frontline nurse at a hospital, and she deals with COVID. So with her, we need to lower the patient ratio to nurses. We need to test the doctors and nurses because they're not being tested, and they can catch it just as easily as anybody else. So in order to save products and help the patients, eliminate it by 3 patients per nurse, and there you go.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
Thank you. First, I would definitely make sure the first responders have the resources that they need. However, the government could make that happen, like making sure that the companies in the United States and not send it overseas when we here in the United States are lacking. I think that's a number one priority. I think also that when the government has an effect on the economy by shutting it down, okay, then they need to resolve that. Just like in eminent domain, when the government takes something from you, they've got to pay you fair and reasonable price for it. So I think the government owes it to those businesses that they have shut down, that they need to compensate for them. So I would be a supporter as well.
Bills, the stimulus package bills, were 75% of that funding had nothing to do with the coronavirus. It's absolutely egregious. This happens all the time at the state level, where they have these omnibus bills or stimulus bills that have nothing to do with proper role of government. And also, civil liberties can't be thrown away because there's a virus. What I've seen, we have to uphold our Constitution every time and foremost. And Trump really needs leaders that will stand with him, and so he doesn't have to sign these terrible bills. It's something that I've experienced firsthand as a state representative for years, and it's these low energy rhino Republicans who just go along to get along and with help of the Democrats. It's absolutely egregious. We need more leaders in there to help Trump and to stand up for what's right, what's constitutional. That's what's the most important part here. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
Thank you. Yes, I think President Trump handled the situation quite well, but one of the things that I would have changed was I would have locked the prices of the medical supplies that were coming from different companies so that the different states didn't have to bid, that they could just order what they needed without having extreme price hikes. I also believe we need to have really talked over with these companies about, from what I've been seeing and hearing, is that they've been selling to foreign countries that are paying cash prices rather than selling here to the United States for the people here. I also believe we need to take care of the first responders and make sure that they have the supplies that they need. And one of the big things is that we need to reduce the illegal immigration as much as possible, and make stricter laws, stricter vetting.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland.
Thank you.
Mr. Underwood.
I think first and foremost, government and our leaders have to work with private businesses to provide the materials and medications that we were just afraid of flat-footed. We caught flat-footed. The Obama administration completed the majority of our N95 masks. We didn't have enough of the medicine that we need to treat people now, and we're having to go out and work. We saw Representative Collins recently acquired some different medicine from a producer in New Jersey for folks here in Georgia. We're going to have to work on that as we get past this, and we're going to get past this soon. We've got to rebuild our stockpile of emergency materials to make sure that we're not ever caught in this situation again. And we've got to provide incentives to bring manufacturing of medical paraphernalia and key materials home so that we're not caught in this and dependent on some other country.
Thank you. Ms. Weeks.
Well, back in January when Dr. Fauci went and talked to some members of the Senate, only about 12 of them showed up. And one had actually suggested that we stop letting people in from China, and that would have been but I would have had him start on testing. I don't know why he didn't start developing testing back then, and then they waited so long. Come the beginning of March, everybody ran out and bought groceries and bought out the grocery stores, and then nothing happened. We didn't shut down. They thought that week we would shut down. Gun stores were bought out. And the next week we thought maybe there would be something that would happen and that people would start closing down. And it took until this past week before it happened. I feel like we lost a lot of time right there. I would have suggested that maybe if we were going to do something like that, we didn't wait so long, because now I feel like we've lost so much business and so many businesses.
Thank you, Ms. Weeks. Thank you.
We're really in a hurt place.
We'll go to question number 12. unique has contributed to the division within American politics today and has falsely reported on President Trump? If so, do you believe certain standards should be placed on the media to ensure truthfulness and accuracy in reporting instead of promoting political biases? We'll start with Ms. Weeks.
It's definitely been biased on, most major channels. They don't report the news anymore. They report their their own opinions is what's going on CNN and MSNBC and some of the big cable networks. I do think they should be just talking heads, and they need to let people know that they're not actually reporting the news, that they're just reporting their opinions.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Sure. Is the media biased? Absolutely. Do I support restrictions on media and supervision of them as to the truthfulness of their statements? That's what the private sector's for. I can imagine giving a government bureaucrat the ability to have a truth detector on the media. Look, people are free to say what they want to say. That's what makes America great. With the First Amendment protects the right of free speech, even if it sometimes is slanted one way. We have right-wing conservative media, which I enjoy. We have left-wing media. But there's no way that I would support a truth detector or someone putting restrictions on that. It's not free speech at that point. So that's what people, we have to go check out different news sources and make sure that we understand the sources and form our own opinions.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
or whatever it needs to be. But I do believe that we do not need to put restrictions on the media. We do have free speech, but be accountable for the slander that sometimes that they put out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gutler.
Thank you. Of course, we should always support our First Amendment, and it goes with the media. You know, we have, I think Americans are smart enough to know all out the news, the deep state, you see of the world really undermine themselves here, and it is just propaganda a lot, and they're really digging themselves a hole. But, you know, Trump's did an excellent job doing that, and that's why they hate him so much. That's why they attack him so much, but even more so now, which is a good thing. And so I believe in the First Amendment, though, and I think that, you know, having more information out there for the voters, for the American citizens to decide, you know, what is right is a good thing, and more a free market issue at that point. Thank you.
Mr. Clyde.
Thank you. First, yes, I believe the media has greatly contributed to the division of the media. They're connecting. On the other side, the free market, I think, needs to take care of the news. As you can see, CNN's ratings are in the dumpster. And News, who is fairly fair and balanced, they are the most popular news network, and I think that's evidence of the American people that the liberal is fake information. So I think the free market needs to take care of that. I do not think that there needs to be any sort of government truth detector to measure the media and penalize the media one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus.
Yes, I believe in the First Amendment, and I believe that if the government tries to step in and regulate the media, it will be violating their First Amendment right. Look, we all know they're full of shit. The media, they lie. If they don't have a story, they're the Weather Channel. You don't see shows like 16 and Doing Good in School. You see 16 and Pregnant. So, yeah, they're full of shit.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to go to some questions that have been submitted by the listeners, and we'll direct these to all the candidates. Number one, and we'll start with Mr. Bogus. How do we fix a broken healthcare system that is so expensive that I can barely afford my doctor visits and medication? Mr. Bogus?
Yes,
Those were submitted via social media.
to fix that, we need transparency. We need transparency in cost of equipment, cost of so we need medical transparency all around. That way you can pick and choose where you want to go and who you want to see.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde?
First, our healthcare system is definitely broken. Eliminate Obamacare, and we go back to free market solution. Back in 2008, before Obama came into office, I provided 100% healthcare for my workers, and it was costing me about $92 per person per month for a really good healthcare plan. Now, in 2020, it's costing me over $500 per worker to provide a similar but not quite as good healthcare plan. So I think the free market needs to be leveraged here. I think we need to be able to get healthcare plans.
I think
across
we've
state
already
lines.
covered that one.
I think that would dramatically reduce the cost of healthcare. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gertler?
Thanks so much. Well, of course, we have to have a free market to help decrease costs and increase competition. That's a lot of things we vote on the state level. Government interference in this. You know, when Obamacare came in, 1/6 of the economy was taken over. We have got to get rid of Obamacare. And what really the irony of this is, you know, Republicans campaigned on getting rid of Obamacare. And when Trump was elected, the Republicans that controlled the House, the Senate, and the executive now couldn't even pass a bill to eliminate it when they campaigned. It's unbelievable, but it's just in line with what I've seen in the state capitol. These rhino Republicans that are doing nothing besides lip service to the voters. Is absolutely insulting. You know, that's what sets me apart. That, you know, I'm a proven record to stand up for Republican principles and increase the size, the scope, and the intrusiveness of government. You vote no. It's not constitutional. You vote no. You have to uphold your Second Amendment rights, your individual liberty, personal responsibility. These are Republican principles.
Thank you, Mr. Gertler.
Thank you.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes, thank you. I believe we need to have an open and free market. We need to reduce interfering and remove Obamacare completely. To allow healthcare to cross state lines, and we need to remove the high deductible requirements that they have on insurances. We also need to make sure, though, that we have a mandatory for pre-existing conditions on all policies and all insurance companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood?
And look, voting no is not going to fix the healthcare system. What I would do is I would support portable health insurance that's not tied to employees. It travels with the employee when they go from job to job. I would also support buying insurance across state lines. Care exchanges, the internet, online are actually good for that, but you can't go across state lines. That needs to be fixed. I support requiring health insurers to cover pre-existing conditions. For a lot of folks out there who couldn't get insurance otherwise. I would also incentivize health savings accounts. I've got one personally. I've saved thousands of dollars with my family on it. in the last 2 years. And we also need to incentivize healthy lifestyles and offer incentives for folks who are being able to maintain a lower risk, stay a lower risk group.
Thank you. Ms. Meeks. Weeks, excuse me.
Well, we definitely need to get rid of Obamacare. The Affordable Care Act is not affordable at all. My husband and I had good insurance until that came into place, and then we lost it 3 years in a row here in Georgia. And now it just costs us a fortune. It went from $600 a month for our family of four to $2,700 a month for a family. I would suggest that we get rid of the government. We need to get the government insurance out of the medical field. They have got so many mandates on insurance policies that you have to get insurance. I'm 50 years old. I'm not having any more kids, but my insurance is maternity leave. But why? You should be able to pick the plan that you need for your family and not have a bunch of stuff lumped in there.
Thank you. Other submitted question. What would you do to reduce crime? And we'll start with Ms. Weeks.
Reduce crime? How about we start following our current laws? We've got criminals coming in every day. Just the thought of crossing the border illegally is a crime that nobody gets punished for it anymore. Instead, they get education and housing and free money from the rest of the taxpayers. I think that we're pretty tough on crime, and maybe we need to reform. I do think we need to reform the justice system, because there are some things that people are being punished for that are a little bit harsh, and like drugs and just small amount of drugs and being stuck in prison for a long time, being just 5% of the world population, but having the greatest percentage of people in prison is kind of scary.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Weeks. Mr. Underwood.
Sure. I think first off, we need to be very careful. The Constitution does not give the federal government the ability to enforce criminal law. They do have some federal crimes that are against the government, but it'd be very limited. This mostly needs to be a state issue and left a state issue. So at the very most, the federal government needs to make sure that impoverished areas, like West Virginia, East Tennessee, that doesn't have the funds to actually maintain law and order, you help those folks out. But for the most part, this needs to be left to the states. The best crime prevention jobs, if people are busy, if they're working, they either don't have time to get in trouble, or they've actually got to put out and have to engage in criminal activity. There will always be criminals, and that needs to be handled at the state level, and we need to support them from the federal level. But the best thing that we do to prevent crime is provide jobs and good economic policy.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
Well, thank you. I think we need to have be more responsible, or make people more responsible for the crime that they have committed, and reduce we need to. One of the big things is illegal immigration. Illegal immigration. We're bringing in a lot of drugs. Support the border wall. Those illegal drugs coming in just go everywhere, and then not only is that a crime, but it produces more crime with the selling and distribution. I also think we need to bring more community police and bring in more money into the state level for the local police officers so that they can do their job with training that they have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Girdler.
Thank you so much. Well, as a congressman, we always need to keep our elected officials accountable. We have the entitlement system, what's going on, equal justice under the law. The entitlement system all the time. And look at Hillary Clinton. She should be in prison. President, the FISA courts, absolutely unbelievable, unconstitutional, and something we could never stand for. So as elected officials up in Congress, we've got to keep the bureaucrats accountable and the deep state. It runs deep. Trump really brought to light the corruption. They attack him all the time. It's something that is egregious. It's insulting to the American people when they undermine our president. So those are some of the reforms I'd like to see if I'm elected to Congress.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
Well, I think reducing crime is primarily a state issue, but there are many things that the federal government can certainly do. And as a congressman, that's what my focus would be. Number one, removing illegal aliens, especially those who have committed one crime, so that they do not become repeat offenders. That would eliminate a lot of repeat crime. The next thing would be national concealed carry. You know, there's nothing that stops a bad guy with a gun like a good guy with a gun. So I think national concealed carry would be a great thing to do. And then maintaining our funding for law enforcement. I think that's important as well.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus.
Constitutional carry. That's how we eliminate criminal activity. Statistics show that once a burglar gets shot, he only does it once. So constitutional carry, I believe they're talking about immigration. You already got Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. Invoke it. Government doesn't have to protect you. Law enforcement doesn't have to protect you. Law enforcement is just that. They enforce the law that's been violated. So protect yourself.
Thank you. Another question here from a listener. If you are pro-life, are you willing to fund pregnancy prevention? And why are you okay forcing a woman to have a child and then abandoning her? And we'll start with Mr. Bogus.
Sorry, couldn't get it unmuted. Yes, I am pro-life, and I do believe in funding help for pregnancy. Because
There's
the
only
thing
one
is,
guy on here
there's
gonna
plenty
know
of
about
people
the
out
10th
there that
Amendment.
would love a child and would love to be able to adopt one. So
Right there.
it should be the same for adoption.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
I'm a very staunch supporter of this pregnancy center. The gist of the question is what the person is asking.
She's just asking if you are pro-life, then what would you do to support the woman that you're forcing to have the child?
Oh, well then it would be the crisis pregnancy centers. Absolutely. Support them.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Girdler.
So much. This comes down to the community, the families, standing up and helping these people. All life is precious and all life is a gift from God, and that's why we passed the heartbeat bill. We need to defund Planned Parenthood as well. And there's a great anti-abortion advocate out in Arizona, Jeff Durbin. And what they do is they go to abortion clinics and they talk down these young women for going in to have abortions, and they take care of them, they house them. I think that's very important, and all that shows is that you don't need government for everything, because the people, they know better, and they can be more efficient than the government can ever be. And so, looking back to the community, the family, to support people like this, because all life's precious no matter the circumstance. So we always have to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
And yes, I think we should support the mother during and after the pregnancy and offer and provide resources so that the mother can see a future.
need to facilitate not having abortions. We do need, as Republicans, need to reach out to folks and say, look, there is resources out there to help you with this child. I can tell you, of my 4 children, my wife was advised to consider abortion for 3 of them. And it went everything from, wow, y'all are really young, you have options, to we're not sure the spine's closing up, you should consider terminating. To my youngest daughter, who just turned 11 last month, we were told she had died in the womb, go ahead and schedule a D&C. Look, I get it. That's a stressful situation. And a lot of folks say what they would do if they were in that situation. We've been there. And we believe that life begins at conception. And we've made that choice. So you can count on me to defend life in Congress. But I also think that as Republicans, we need to be reaching out to folks and saying, look, there are resources for you to help take care of this child. And if you can't take care of the child, I promise there is someone who wants to adopt that child. So regarding your question about birth control, if a private insurer wants to provide that, sure, that's fine. But we shouldn't be forcing religious institutions, particularly Catholic institutions, that may object to it, that they have to provide birth control. There needs to be a
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Ms. Weeks.
I am pro-life. I do believe that women that are pro-choice, they have the choice if they ever get pregnant. They need to be thinking about birth effects. And if they get into the situation where they do happen to get pregnant, there are so many resources out there to help them along the way. And there are government-funded resources too that to provide them with food and with doctor's visits and medical care and everything even after they have the baby. I suggest if you can't keep the baby, then there are a lot of people out there that want to adopt. There are charities out there that help women and help women after their pregnancy and help them with their babies. And I think that that's the route to go.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood. Correction, Ms. Weeks.
You just had me.
Okay. All right, let me find another question that we have not covered here. Socialists like AOC and Bernie Sanders are taking over our government. If elected, what would you do to promote free markets? We'll start with Ms. Weeks.
To promote free markets, I guess you'd have to fight everything that they say. If everybody just looked at the economy and how it was going under a free market, they'd all see that everybody was doing so well. It was up until this last month when socialism started kicking in and that people are seeing that you can't afford everything. The government cannot fund the world, and we sure can't fund everybody staying at home. I think people are realizing that now, and that it's going to be free, and somebody has to pay for it. So they're just going to have to look back at the free market and how it works and how well we were doing up until now.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Sure. Socialism is marked by shortages of goods and intense government restrictions. So how are y'all enjoying this 30-day free trial of socialism? I think this is a unique teaching opportunity so that folks can understand that when the government controls things, and the government tells you where you can go and when you can go and how you can do it, that it's really it's a matter of reaching out to the youth and the younger generation to say that we actually have more freedom.
You. Ms. Strickland.
Hi, thank you. We are a capitalist country, and we need to stay that way. I think we need to fight socialism that is trying to destroy this country every chance that they get, and keep us on a free and open market. And I think that would be the best way to fight socialism.
You.
Much. We need to start right here. We've had candidates talk about, socialist programs to fund to the states, to the federal government, when that's not the proper role of government whatsoever. Already in this campaign, AOC, she's a crazy socialist. I've been compared as her antithesis in this race. We're about the same age, and but I'm so far to the right, she's so far to the left. People are about that in our campaign. The free market ultimately is what we need to be upholding. 65% of the bills I vote against have to do with the interference in the free market, and this is coming from Republicans. That's what's so egregious about it. We have to lead by example. We can't go to the bathrooms. This is something I see happen routinely in the State House. The Republicans don't want to be on record, and they walk to the bathrooms to not be on record and abstain from the votes. There's no abstentions in Georgia. So we have to lead by example. That's the only way to do it, and the only way to change things for the better for our country. And that's by upholding the Constitution and recognizing the government's proper role is to protect life, liberty, and property, and that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus, correction, Mr. Clyde.
Okay, thank you. First, as a U.S. Navy officer, I have been to over 40 countries in the world, and there's no country like this one, not even close. And it's because we are free, because we have a capitalistic economy. It promotes the dignity of work. It promotes people receiving benefit for the work that they do, and so it's entirely our job as Congress to promote capitalist economy. We don't compromise with socialism. They promise free stuff at someone else's expense. Well, that person, someone else is us or our children or our future generations. So absolutely not. We do not agree with socialism. I would never vote for a socialist policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bogus.
Yes, I would post pictures of what we're going through right now. If you like toilet paper, don't vote for socialism. I mean, honestly, the elite do not have to suffer with this. AOC will never have to suffer with this. We do. We, the American people. They tell you free, 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 free. Everything's free. It's not. It's absolutely. They paint you a pretty picture, but socialism will never work in America. Mostly because we have too much corporatism. They won't allow socialism.
Thank you. At this time, I think we'll go to closing statements. And we'll start with Mr. Bogus. You have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Okay. Well, I'm not a politician by no means. Am I going to say things that you won't like? Probably. But you know what? Neither will the Democrats. So I'm taking this opportunity to show you, as American citizens, that we can step up. It doesn't have to be a lawyer. It doesn't have to be a doctor. It doesn't have to be a politician. You as an American, it's on you to change your rights. I love my constitutional rights, and I will always uphold it. I'll have it forever. I'll always uphold your constitution first. With that being said, everybody have a day for tuning in.
Thank you. Mr. Clyde.
Thank you so much to the Republicans of Northeast Georgia for hosting this digital forum, and a special thank you to our frontline workers and medical professionals who are out there in this unique crisis. I'm an evangelical Christian, a U.S. Navy veteran, a business owner, and the only candidate in this election who is endorsed by Georgia's lone Freedom Caucus member, Jody Hyson. Congressman, because I believe we need people in Washington who will protect our innocent unborn, defend our Second Amendment rights, build the wall, proudly stand up for our president, and end overreaching unconstitutional government. I fought terrorists in the deserts of Iraq. I defeated corrupt IRS bureaucrats in the courtroom, and I will certainly take on socialist Democrats and the establishment in Washington, D.C. I'm Andrew Clyde, and I'm running for Congress here in the 9th District. I ask for your prayers. I ask for your vote. Soli Deo Gloria. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gardner.
much for having me. I really appreciate it. You know, it's one thing to say something, it's another thing to do it. I've been leading by example in Georgia's House for 4 years. I have the most conservative record in the state for free markets, for the Constitution, for individual liberty, for promoting personal responsibility and our Second Amendment rights, and leading that charge with constitutional carry. You know, leading by example is the only way we're going to change government. You have to have people that will stand up, draw the line in the sand, and say no. My proven record, along with my experience at the Capitol, and along with my age, are what sets me apart in this election. I would thank everybody for having me. You know, some say that we should, you know, reform some government. A lot of the government, you know, should be cut or killed altogether. Government's way too big, way too intrusive. This is the same thing we're facing on the state level, on the federal level. The state level really is just a mirror of D.C. with the corruption, with the establishment. And I've been standing up to those guys for 4 years straight and proving myself. This is the most conservative district, the third most conservative district in the United States, and I'm the most conservative member of the General Assembly. This is right in line with our mountain values and principles. And I couldn't thank you guys enough for having me on. Please visit my website, mattgertler.com, or give me a call at 706-490-2285. I want to reach out to everybody. I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you. Ms. Strickland.
Thank you for having me here today. I think the people's choice for Georgia's 9th District Congressional seat is going to be a hard one, but I think I'm the best choice. I've been working hard, serving the public, and I want to continue to serve by representing the people of the 9th District. When you send me to Washington, I will help President Trump drain the swamp and stop the fraud, waste, and abuse. I will fight to protect your constitutional rights, and I will fight the left who are trying to destroy this country. I'll be that strong conservative voice that Congress needs. Some of the other candidates have been looked at by the establishment and special interest groups, and they've had big money fundraisers. But I have a grassroots campaign, and I need your help to move forward. I am a true outsider, a true conservative Republican, and I will be Georgia's best choice for Congress in the 9th District. I am pro-life, pro-gun, and pro-American. Vote for me, Maria Strickland, on June 9th. You can find out more about me at strickland4congress.com. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Mr. Underwood.
Let me close with a question. Do you know who we're fighting in Washington? We are fighting against entrenched politicians who are going to do whatever they can to protect their political power. We are fighting against a vicious liberal media that is doing everything it can to watch our president, or to thwart our president. They want him to fail. We are fighting a Congress that is fighting our president and is log-jamming good legislation that we need to help our folks here in Northeast Georgia. Folks, we're running in a hostile environment, and who we send up to Washington, D.C. matters. It doesn't just matter for us, it matters for the whole conservative and the Republican Party. Because, look, whoever wins the Republican primary is going to be the Congress. They're going by 80%. It's a safe seat. Because of that, we can carry legislation that a Republican from Illinois is only winning about 1 or 2%. They can't stick their neck out. But we can. We are a vital member of the Congress. We're not just one of 435 representatives. We are a key player, and who we send up there matters. We can't just send another politician who thinks they're entitled to the role, or who's going to think with the government mindset. We can't send somebody up there to just go vote no. We can't send somebody who's going to go up there and get eaten alive by the Washington machine. We need somebody who's battle ready on day one to stand with President Trump and fight for our conservative values. My whole career has prepared me for this. We're going into a battle, folks. It is a battle. Don't mistake that. It's going to be a battle to protect the unborn. It's going to be a battle to protect amendment rights. It's going to be a battle to expand rural broadband. It's going to be a battle to help our small businesses. But I'm ready for that battle. I'm asking for your support. I'm asking for your prayers. I'm asking for you to go to voteethanunderwood.com. Join our team.
Thank you. Ms. Weeks.
Hi, I'm Penny Weeks, and I do believe I am uniquely qualified for this position as a wife and a mother and a business owner. I am not politically connected. I am connected to the people of the 9th District. I have been owning and operating Georgia Gun Store for the last 10 years, and I have come to know a lot of people, and everybody knows me for being fair and balanced with everybody that comes in. I believe I will I will do a good job in Congress, and I will be there for the 9th District, and I will fight hard in learn more about me, go to kellyforcongress.com. Thank you.
Thank you. That is the end of our question period. I'd like to thank all the candidates for your participation. I'd like to thank all the audience members for tuning in and providing some of the more important issues of the day. And I wish all of you the best of luck in your campaign. I'll turn it back over to James King, the chairman of the Northeast Georgia Young Republicans.
Ron said, I do want to echo Ron's statements, thanking everyone for their attendance today, both the candidates who were here and also the audience members who watched digitally. I do realize that this is certainly an interesting medium in which we presented this debate, but as my I believe in adapting, improvising, and overcoming. And so that's certainly what we try to do now with these unusual times. So again, thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, and God bless. Okay.